Yep,
Hello,
that's
YouTube.
fine. Welcome, welcome. Appreciate you joining us, and might be a little soon for anybody yet, but
Yeah, that's okay.
it's
That's
all
okay.
right. 10 folks waiting to get in the room today, so that's awesome. It's supposed to be nasty.
It is nasty out there.
Is
So
it
nice.
snowing yet?
No, it's just still kind of rainy, drizzly.
Is it? I don't think we're supposed to get much though.
No, I mean it's still 43 out there, I think, right now.
Yeah. My daughter's wanting to go get her puppy tomorrow.
Oh,
So
that'll be exciting.
tomorrow night we're supposed to go to Indiana for an hour drive and hour and a half and get a puppy. So I was like, oh, please
I
don't.
know. Yeah, I think Laurie showed me a picture. It's so cute.
Oh, it's adorable. Yeah.
It'd be good.
Yeah.
Hopefully, everybody out there has got a new year off to a great start.
Hmm.
Can't believe we're already halfway through January.
I know, right? I was like, how is this possible? It's like there's no way today's the 14th, but
That's
yep,
quick.
it is. Goes by in a blink of an eye. You want to let our folks
We
in?
sure can.
Okay. Get them settled. Hey, folks, thank you for joining us today. We greatly appreciate you being with us on this kind of dreary day, but
Well, what better place to be than with us right now? You know,
right,
we're getting to
exactly.
talk about some cool topics with some cool guests, and glad to have you all with us for sure.
Got about 2 to 3 minutes before we
Yeah,
start.
it's about it. Yeah, hang tight with us. Go get a refill on your coffee, tea, or water, or beverage of choice.
Or if you know something, you just have a burning question, go ahead and put that in the chat
Yeah,
pod and we will get that
I might
answered
be
for
able
you.
might be able to get an answer before the show even starts.
Yeah, I know. And I don't know if everyone knows or not, but we do have like what we call an after party after the show, after we say, we'll see you, bye. We actually, where you can ask questions if you'd like. I know some of y'all get off really quick and others don't, and that's okay, whatever you'd like to do. But just so you know that, our presenters are on after we say bye, until I actually end the webinar, we're actually still on. So,
Yeah, usually around 12 or so, we'll stick around too.
mhm. So if you just have a burning question, and it doesn't necessarily even
Yep.
have to be about that topic,
Nope.
we'll try to answer it. Not that we can, but
Yeah.
if we
And,
can't,
and
we'll get someone else to do it.
Yep, and you can always hit us up via email, forestry.extension@uky.edu. If something comes to mind when you're not with us live, we'd be happy to respond to you that way.
Mhm.
They say the waiting's the hardest part, Renee.
I know it's always awful. That's why I think it's best to like turn us on at
Time to go.
ten
Yeah,
fifty nine.
I
Because
know.
otherwise we're sitting here going,
I know.
uh,
Let's go.
"Let's go,"
I know.
but I don't want to,
I
have
know.
anybody miss the beginning.
I
So,
know.
but we're almost there, Billy. We're so close. 10:59 and counting.
Oh wow, Black Panther in the Bardstown area. Wow, have to. We can run
Oh,
that by.
really?
Yeah, we can run that by Franny. She's got
Yeah.
actually she's got some connections to some private lands biologists that work in that area.
Yeah, we might.
She might be able to fill us in a little bit if she's heard something too. Interesting. We've got some other contacts with Fish and Wildlife. We might reach out to.
Mm-hmm.
So to your question, I'm not sure. I would be surprised if it was a Black Panther.
Unless
Mountain
someone
lion
let
might
one
be.
out.
Right. Yeah, somebody relocated one,
Mm.
but you never know. That's for sure.
Happened before.
You never know. So yeah, we'll look into that one, see if we can find out any verification for you.
Go ahead and get it recording. All right. You ready to go, Billy?
I'm ready.
All right. Hi, I'm Renee Williams,
And I'm Billy Thomas.
and welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. Since we're starting this, I guess, new year, I mean,
Yeah,
I know we've had one show,
that's
but
okay.
new year, we're still in January, right?
Yes.
Several folks have asked, like, how do I find out about From the Woods Today?
Yep.
Like, how do I learn more about it? And so we have an abundance amount of ways.
Oh, we're
So
about to let you know,
we're about
right?
to
Yeah.
drop some information on y'all. So there's several different ones. Obviously, the one we promote all the time, from thewoods today.com. I mean, you can always go there. You
Yep.
can find all of our past shows. If you click on specific things, I've actually, one of our viewers had asked for a search function. I've been working on that search function for a long time, and I'm glad to say, I think we finally have it. I've got to test it out a little
Are
more,
you right?
but I'm gonna hopefully I'll have it up this week, so that'll be exciting. So you can search,
Yep.
like, you type in Tree ID, and all the shows that we've ever had with Tree ID will pop up.
That'd
So
be
that'll
awesome.
be amazing.
That will
Uh,
be really nice addition. Yeah.
Really nice addition, yes. So thank you for our ag people helping us out there.
Takes a
Um,
village.
it's a big deal,
It is.
Also, on our Facebook channel and our Instagram, we post what our show topics are going to be. So you can please like us,
Yep.
thumbs up,
Yep.
do us,
Yep.
share that with other
Yes.
friends of yours, get the word out on that. We also have a YouTube channel that we put all of these on, and so
Smash that
please,
subscribe button, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
hit that subscribe button.
Yeah.
That helps us out tremendously,
Yep.
and watching it that way. And if you
Yeah.
watch it from our From the Woods Today, that actually
Yeah.
goes to our YouTube
Yeah.
too, so we still get the
Yeah.
counts on there.
Yeah.
And also we have our Lipson, which is a podcast, because so when Billy says something about, if you're on our podcast, so what that is we are pulling the audio from this visual, and putting it on. It's not a, I guess, true podcast in the sense of a podcast, but we used to do From the Woods, Kentucky beforehand, and it was just a radio show that we did. And then when COVID hit, wow, everything changed, right? So we started doing this, and so now, but people that were listening to From the Woods, Kentucky, were like, where's our podcast? So we just pull the audio from this. So if you're in your car, you could go to any,
Yep.
pretty much any platform that holds podcasts, and you could listen to us there too. So there's a
Uh-huh.
lot of different ways to listen to us. One
Yep.
more that we have is Constant Contact. On our From the Woods Today, you can sign up to get notices
Yep.
about this. 1 hour before the show, I send emails, or 1 to 3 days beforehand, depending on my work schedule.
Right.
You will get an email on that.
Right.
So tons of ways to get informed about From the
Yes.
Woods Today.
And a great way about that, Renee, is if you get on some of those lists or you subscribe, then you're going to be aware of when these shows are coming up, and it's going to make it a lot easier for you to stay with us. So please, hit those subscribe buttons, and sign up for our emails, and participate wherever you can. And better yet, share it with other folks, right? One of the things we're really trying to do with this program is grow it. You can help a lot. You all know other people here in Kentucky or the region who would benefit from the information the show provides. So please help us spread the word and get it out there.
Yeah. And you could even put your email in the chat function right now, and I will add you to our constant contact if you'd like. Just tell me if you want 1 hour or 1 to 3 days ahead, and I will
There
go
you
ahead and add you to that.
go. Good
Speaking of
stuff.
going ahead, let's go ahead and get this
I
show
know we've got
rolling,
another
Billy.
great show today. Really excited about our two guests we have. We have from the Kentucky Division of Forestry. Going to be talking about it's pruning trees. It's a good time to be thinking about that right now. Kind of as we get into the winter, late winter is a good time to do that. We're going to have Mr. Chris Wiedemann with us. Now, Chris is also an arborist, and he does a lot with the Division of Forestry. He helps run their community and urban forestry program. But we are kind of tapping into his arborist skill set and asking him to talk about pruning trees. So really look forward to having Chris on with us shortly. And then we have our very own Franny Preston. Everybody knows Franny from our Forestry Works program, but Franny also has a strong wildlife background, and she's going to be talking about some of those dead trees and logs that are out in the woods and what good they do for some of our friends that share the forest with us. So really excited to have Franny on with us. If you have any questions for our presenters, please use the chat function if you're on Zoom with us. And if you're a podcast listener or a YouTube subscriber, thank you. You can hit us up via email at forestry.extension@uky.edu, and we can interact with you and respond to you that way. But Renee, glad to be with you on this kind of overcast, rainy day here in Lexington, Kentucky, but excited about another episode of From the Woods today.
Definitely. So let's go ahead and get started. Chris, if you want to turn your camera on and join us. Welcome to the show.
Greetings.
Appreciate you being
Hey,
here.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, we
No
were
problem.
talking and we're like, what are some topics that you could do? And he said, well, I could talk about pruning. And I was like, that's awesome.
You can
You
talk
know,
about a lot of stuff, but yeah, I'm really glad to
Yeah.
have you on talking about this,
I
Chris.
think he
You
gave
know,
me a long list. And I'm like, yes, yes, yes,
yes, yes, yes, please,
yes.
yes, please, yes. Love it.
Yeah.
Um,
So, Chris, if you want to go ahead and get your slides started, that'd be awesome.
Will do. Right. Okay, can everyone see that?
They're
Words,
started. Yep, we
gotcha.
can see him.
All
Good.
right.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Yeah, fantastic. And just I'll go at it. So yeah, I did give a long list. I love pruning. I love thinking about pruning, thinking about how energy moves in trees and how we affect that through pruning. Um, I got a ton of things to say about pruning. Um, so as I thought about pruning, um, I came up with kind of three main headings. I always like to talk first and foremost about why we prune. We should have a reason for going in and noodling around inside of a tree's crown. Um, I also thought we should talk a bit about tree physiology and kind of the anatomy of a tree so that we know what we're doing to where and why. And then I've got a ton of best practices and things to talk about for when we actually start to prune. Um, so, as way of introduction again, my name is Chris Wiedemann. I am the Urban and Community Forestry Program Coordinator for the Kentucky Division of Forestry. I'm a forester, an ISA, International Society of Arboriculture certified arborist, and an environmental educator. The majority of the pictures and diagrams I'm going to use today come from the U.S. Forest Service's Tree Owner's Manual. It is a phenomenal one-stop shop for all things tree care, taking care of our trees from installation and planting, pruning, maintenance, watering. Anything you're looking for is probably in this document. It is available free online. You can use the web info there or QR code to get there. So, general pruning and just kind of some general stuff, which there is a lot of still. But just to give you some information and things to think about and go by when you have a tree that you might want to prune. So, why we prune? Why do we prune trees? Always like to ask that question first. Why are we doing this? Trees have been around for a lot longer than we have and have been taking care of themselves. And if there's not a reason to prune, then maybe we shouldn't be doing it. And maybe we don't need to prune. But thinking about the why is important. When we categorize these things, number one is safety. Pruning for safety, always. So any sort of broken branches or dead branches that could provide a safety concern are things we should address, um, as well as things like visibility. Can we see around the crown of this tree if we're in the street? Does it provide a visibility hazard for cars? And then things like pedestrians and car traffic. Is the tree well enough above those vehicles and people that it's not creating a safety issue either? And then health. Is there an infected branch on the tree that pruning that branch could save the life or even improve the health of the tree or even neighboring trees? And then when we think about health-wise, and maybe we have fruit trees, going in and pruning to reduce potential weight of fruit within the tree can improve the health of the tree and prevent broken branches. A bunch of apples can weigh a lot. And so if we know the tree will produce fruit, maybe thinking about that ahead of time. And then, of course, aesthetics. There are a ton of different prunings for different aesthetic prunes, and we won't touch as much on that today. Um, but those are kind of three categories of why we would prune. Some visuals for that, of course, those broken branches and dead branches. We can also think about structure of the tree. And in younger trees, that can be really important. We can get in and do structural pruning to ensure that we have one nice kind of Christmas tree picturesque solid lead in that tree. And we'll talk a bit more about where the leads are in trees in a moment. talked about fruit production, and then there are a host of other considerations. But ensuring that we have a reason that we're doing the work is important, and we're not just in there noodling around, potentially harming the tree by doing our pruning. So, tree physiology. Always like to give some anatomy of what we're doing in the tree and why. Um, in our trees, place I always like to start when we talk about pruning is the crown of the tree. All of the leafy green part of the tree forms the crown. And throwing back to our fourth grade science class, that leafy green crown of the tree is the engine of the tree that feeds the rest of the organism. So as we go through pruning, we're really thinking a lot about that crown as a whole, but then working inside of that crown too. Inside of the crown will be our central lead. So ideally, we have one lead going straight up like our Christmas tree top. And that's the lead of the tree. Our trees grow from the outer edges. Every year, our trees have little buds that in the spring they burst, put on new wood, extend that branch out a little farther, and that happens at the top of the tree as well. And so thinking about where those leads in the tree, be them at the top of the tree or in our branches, is important. And then moving into the crown, thinking about those individual limbs and branches. Semantics wise, limbs are typically large branches, and then branches are smaller off of those limbs. Um, the branches have some structure that we really want to pay attention to. There's a thing called a bark ridge there on the top, and then the trunk collar. And that trunk collar is going to be a really important section for us to pay attention to as we go through pruning trees. I always like to use my hands as examples for things. If we're holding on to the trunk of the tree and our arm is the branch coming off, that space where our wrist narrows, right there would be our branch or trunk collar. And it's important to think about that where that narrowing is because as we prune trees, we're going to want to make the smallest surface area cuts we can. Every pruning cut we make in a tree is a wound for potential infection and decay. And so reducing the size of those cuts allows the tree to heal over and callus over them quicker and makes that a lot safer for the tree. So being aware of where those trunk or branch collars are, they can go by either name, will be important as we move forward with our pruning. Looking at our branches, we want to look at the unions of branches where two branches come together. And we want to have strong, kind of broad unions without any sort of craggly or included bark. And you're like, Chris, I don't know what included bark is. So I like to use my hand again. If we have our thumb and pointer finger out in kind of a nice check mark or L shape, that's a nice broad branch union and it's nice and smooth in between. As we move our thumb and pointer finger together, we start to get some creasing in our skin in between. And that, if we're a tree, is our included bark. So bark that's in between the wood of the tree, which forms a weak point. So anytime we have those really tight included bark branch unions, those are spaces we want to think about and maybe do something with. So best practices. We're getting to the meat of the thing. For what we're doing today, we're primarily going to talk about hand tools. So hand pruners, loppers, hand pruning saws, pole pruners with the little hook end that prunes on the end. We want to avoid things like bow saws and grandpa's old carpentry saw that are pretty big and thick and don't get into those nice branch areas very easily and could really damage the tree more than we want to while we do our work. So best practices before we start pruning, making sure we have all of our safety protective gear, right? Making sure we're taking care of ourselves, number one. So gloves, sleeves, eyewear, all of that kind of thing. And you're like, okay, I get gloves and eyewear. Why sleeves? We've got a lot of good stuff happening on the inside of our arms, especially, and we want to make sure we protect that because things like pruning saws have really sharp teeth. And it just takes one kind of slipper mistake to get a good scratch that could become an issue. And so even having a bit of fabric on your arm can help prevent that. As we come up to our tree, checking our surroundings around the tree, especially looking up. So looking up into the tree, looking up around the tree. Um, Never prune any trees or branches that are within of electrical lines. Especially if you're using something like a pole pruner that can be kind of wiggly up in the air. We want to stay away from those electrical lines. And you'll notice as I move forward down this list, there's an asterisk. For any of these asterisks, anytime you get in a spot of doubt, ask an arborist. Contact a certified arborist, and I'll give you some information on how to do that later on. Things to be aware of when we are working in and around electrical lines, even outside of that 10 feet. If there are any branches or limbs touching electrical lines, no go. Trees and branches can conduct electricity, and even some of those lower level communication lines can still have electric in them. So, once again, when in doubt, contact an arborist. Um, we want to keep our feet on the ground, feet plural, both feet. With the caveat of orchard ladders, which are specifically designed to be used in trees, ladders and trees don't really mix. Um, Anytime we get our feet off of the ground in an elevated space, that adds an extra level of hazard and danger to the pruning. And that's a point where we should really think about contacting an arborist again. Avoid power equipment. Power equipment is powered. I almost put a capital P on there, which means becomes an extra level of danger and then training and awareness as well when we use that equipment. I have seen things from sawzalls on used for pruning trees that just also aren't designed or appropriate for the use and can sometimes cause more damage while we're pruning the tree than we really need to. Um, and then always, whenever we're using a pruning saw or even power equipment, doing a three-step method for our pruning cuts. And we'll describe that in detail a little later on. So it's time to get in. We've got our safety stuff on. We're going to start doing some pruning. Early pruning is best and early in the life stage of the tree. So prior pruning can prevent some bigger, more costly pruning later on down the line. So the more we can get in and do that regular maintenance with our trees, the better we will be down the line as that tree grows. As we do our pruning, we want to be conscious of not taking more than 25% of the live crown of the tree at any one pruning time. And we'll talk a bit about that here in a second, what that looks like. It's a bit of tuning one's eye to looking at the tree. While we're pruning, we want to be pruning for well-attached branches, a good central leader, um, clearance for vehicles and pedestrians, and we're really aiming to maintain around a 60% or greater live crown ratio in the tree. And I'll show you a diagram kind of explaining what that is here in a moment. And then crown balance. We don't really want to shave one side of the tree and offset kind of the mechanics of how the tree has been growing and change the balance in the tree. So balancing our pruning as we go through the tree is important. Thinking about that 25%, you can mentally block your tree off into like pie-shaped quarters or however, or if you want to think of it in slices going upward in quarters. But sometimes one branch will just kind of be a trick branch and it'll jut out of one of those quarters, and just pruning that branch alone could be taking a large portion of your tree. So always before we start pruning, we want to do a 360 full walk around of our tree and begin to think and assess what we're going to do, if possible. The live crown ratio of the tree, if we think of the total height of a tree, the live crown would be the height of that living crown in comparison to the height of the tree. So if it's a 10-foot young tree and it has 8 feet of living green, gorgeous crown on it, which can be common in yard grown, open grown trees, it would have an 80% live crown ratio, well within that 60%. Um, for things like conifers, that are not broadleaf trees, they're used to growing with a smaller live crown ratio, and so can keep going with something much less than 60%. Okay, we're starting to prune. We still have to be aware of our surroundings. We've looked up, there are no utility lines. Pruning's interesting, and not just for folks like me. People want to see what you're doing. So be aware that it might attract some folks coming and eyeballing what's happening. Be aware of your surroundings, kids, dogs. Branches can be heavy, even smaller branches. I usually equate like how trees hold water and the weight of branches to milk jugs. Most everyone's picked up a milk jug and they're not light. Well, you imagine all the water being held in a branch, in the wood of a branch, as a milk jug. And so as we're doing work, being conscious of our surroundings, folks that may wander into the area where we're working. We always want to make good, clean cuts, and we'll talk about how we do that in a moment. As well, we want to make sure that we're removing any stub pieces of branches and cleaning up any jagged bark in our cuts. Similar to us, trees heal over a lot better when they have a good, clean, smooth cut versus having that road rashy, kind of jaggedy cut. It takes them longer as well to callus over and heal those wounds. For any of those jagged edges, we can use a nice sharp razor blade X-Acto knife edge or knife edge to clean and smooth them up, scribing those cut wounds to make them cleaner. If we're working in trees that have some sort of fungal infection or other infection material, we want to make sure we remove all of that infected debris from the site. Sometimes leaving infected debris can actually help spread that fungal or other disease into other trees or keep it in our tree. And then if we are working infected trees or trees that we know are susceptible to different infections that might be around, sanitizing our tools with at least a 70% or greater isopropyl or ethyl alcohol is fantastic before and after work. Okay, how do we make good clean cuts? So we'll talk about the three-step method, three-cut method that has been taught before. I would add a fourth step into it, and that's an observational step. But knowing how we do these cuts is important because it helps us make clean cuts that are safe for the tree and safe for us. And it also translates into those smaller tools that we use. If we have the idea of how we make three good, healthy cuts on a tree, we can make one good cut with a hand pruner, which you're really only making one final cut with that typically. And the three-step method works with hand saws, pruning saws, as well as with pole pruning saws. So the three-step method, um, we have our branch. There are going to be three different cuts that we make along that branch. Before we even start laying saw to branch, we want to find that trunk collar or branch collar in the limb that we're working on, because that's going to define where all the rest of the work needs to happen, and specifically where that last cut needs to be. So we find that, we find where the swelling reduces in the limb, and we want to make our last cut just beyond that. And so we know that we need to do all the rest of our work out from that space. So our first cut will be an undercut on the underside of the tree. And this cut is going to reduce any peeling of the bark from our second cut. As we cut under the tree, we're not going to go more than a third of the way up into the branch from the bottom. And there'll be weight out on the branch beyond where we're cutting in the bottom, which will add to some pinching in our saw. If we start to get pinching in our saw, we want to make sure we back out of there and maybe start cutting a little more, just next to that. So once we've cut and gotten a nice kind of rounded on the bottom cut for our first cut that'll reduce the potential for peeling bark, we move to our second cut. And the second cut is going to be a weight reduction cut. So this reduces all the weight that is farther down on our limb so that when we do our third, we don't have to worry about that. And we can do it nice and smoothly in our own time and safely. This cut will be from the top of the branch downward. And so this is the one where all of the weight comes off, and ideally, any peeling stops at that first cut we did. Once we've removed that weight, We know where our trunk or branch collar is. We find that area where it narrows so we can make the smallest cut that we can. And we do our finishing cut, and this will be our final cut number 3. And so we saw again from the top to bottom on that one, and finish that out with a nice, smooth, clean cut. Like I said, same thing translates over to a pole saw. It's just farther up in the air. With pole saws, I would highly you to wear some sort of head protection as well as eye protection for sure, because sawdust will come down in your eyes. Things we're trying to avoid. Flush cuts. Flush cuts are straight flush with the stem of the tree, with the trunk of the tree. And they're substantially larger than when we use our 3-step method and we make that cut out to where it narrows beyond the branch or trunk collar. Um, Making smaller cuts allows the tree to heal over quicker and make those wounds smaller and prevent potential fungal and infectious entry. We also want to reduce peeling in the tree. That kind of top right orangish bark peel that we see is now a wound, and the tree has to heal that over. And it's a long, awkwardly shaped wound that the tree now has to heal. And the longer it has to heal, the more potential for decay and infection we have. And then our third one, we're avoiding any stubs or stobs, little jaggedy stair step pieces, because those are also hard for the tree to heal over. This one just could have used a final cut on it to remove that little stair step piece. Um, Thinking about kind of visual what we are versus what we aren't looking for, nice, circular, smooth cuts. Like the one on the left there, that's already starting to heal really nicely. And eventually it'll turn into these kind of eye-looking shapes on the tree. And as the tree grows, those will disappear, and no one will ever know it happened. Conversely, we don't want kind of the awkward flush cuts that are large and kind of oblong shaped that the tree takes longer to heal over. And then leaving stubs, the tree won't heal over those stubs well, and that stub then becomes a 3-dimensional area of inlet of decay. Timing. As we've mentioned, winter's the best time to prune trees. As an arborist and a forester, we love winter because all the trees are naked. You can see the structure of everyone and what's happening out there with our trees. As well, you don't have all of that leafy stuff getting in your way when you go to prune and look at the structure of the tree. For the most part, though, we can prune most trees any time of the year. There is a caveat to that, and that's trees in our area that are susceptible to things like oak wilt and fire blight. So, oak wilt and fire blight are diseases that trees get, and they change the timing of when we can prune those trees. So, oak wilt, as it sounds, attacks oak trees, and pretty much in most of our state outside of kind of the bluegrassy area, but can still attack trees there potentially. They'll have these leaves that kind of look waterlogged and just this off brown color. And once oak wilt gets in, they go down pretty fast for the most part. Um, for our oak trees, we want to make sure that we're not pruning them or cutting them even sometimes in the early summer and spring. So once they've put on leaves, once they're dropping leaves, don't touch them. The reason being is oak wilt's transmitted a lot of times through insects. And when we're making pruning wounds on trees, these active wounds, when we make them, are basically shouting out to the world, like, I've been attacked. And they make a really nice, susceptible site for these insects to bring that infectious material and fungal material in. If we have to prune a tree, or even remove a tree entirely during these times, we have some special considerations. If we remove a tree during the growing season and it's adjacent to some other oak trees, and we know that that tree we removed has had oak wilt, we want to think about the roots underground because that stump can still be a vector for entrance of disease into those neighboring trees through root grafting. Sometimes trees will kind of hold root hands underneath the ground and share resources and information. And if we have a tree like that, we want to make sure that we trim the roots in between those two trees to prevent that cross infection. If we have to prune an oak tree during the summer, this is the only time and only caveat for wound dressings, for applying anything to a pruning wound that we make. The reason being is applying a wound dressing to that wound during the growing season will prevent those insects from infecting the tree. All other pruning, wound dressings are not necessary and not advised. Wound dressings typically can hold water and moisture on that wound site, and that can lead to decay. So unless it is an oak tree pruned during that growing season time, no wound dressings are necessary. This is definitely somewhere where we want to talk with an arborist about that pruning. Fire blight. Um, Fire blight is rampant in urban areas for sure, where we plant a lot of apple trees and apple family trees. Fire blight heavily impacts things like apples, crab apples, um, pears, hawthorn trees, things that are showy, have a nice flower, and we plant a lot in our urban spaces. If we have to prune an apple family tree, same sort of deal. Don't plant or don't prune it from when it begins to flower into the fall. So once it's dropped leaves, we're good to go. Fire blight creates these scorched looking leaf areas, typically on the towards the ends of our stems and branches, and really looks like somebody has burnt our tree. And this can be a really infectious um, disease within our urban spaces. For anytime we prune an apple tree, even if it is not infected with fire blight, sanitizing our tools with that 70% plus isopropyl or ethyl alcohol before and after we prune is key to preventing any sort of these fungal infections from moving around. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the most hazardous and devastating form of pruning that happens, topping trees. Topping trees is an absolute no-no. Um, if we think about that living crown as the engine of our tree again that sustains the tree, this is the basic removal of all of those apical growing points out at the ends of our tree's canopy, as well as substantially taking more than that 25% and devastatingly removing down that live crown ratio. Um, Aside from just that massive impact it has on the energy economy of how the tree sustains itself, the tree then has to pump energy that it's stored away into making new branches from buds that it's hidden underneath of the bark and just kind of has going along for like a devastating emergency, which this would be. And all of those new branches from those secondary buds are generally weakly attached. All of that secondary growth is not nearly as well attached as that primary growth the tree was already working with. And so thinking about topping trees versus doing some good structural pruning, having all of those weakly attached branches greatly increases the potential for branch breakage in storms. And so tree topping, absolutely not. Have to say it. Finally, I'll round out with a couple of resources. Again, the Tree Owner's Manual, fantastic resource for all things tree care. Check it out. It's free online. And then if you do need to find or talk with an arborist, the International Society of Arboriculture, who certifies arborists around the world, has a website where you can find local arborists or even verify that somebody is an arborist in your area. So check that out. It's treesaregood.org, all mashed together, or you can use the QR code there. I am happy to answer any questions. I thoroughly enjoy pruning things and have tons of stuff to say about it. Um, and that's that.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you
Very
so
good.
very much. It was a great presentation. We
My
do really appreciate it. We have questions coming in.
Yeah.
So
okay.
so let's see.
Yeah, good job, Chris. Thank you, buddy.
I
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it too because I was really wondering is like, is winter the best time to prune? Because it would be easier to see. So I'm glad that we actually did this presentation right now. So
It's a great time for it.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions, this actually may be for us a little bit, Chris, but there was a question about when using a pole saw, how do you cut from underneath? Saying they
That
cut vertically, yeah.
is
Maybe,
a bear. So ideally, your pole saw has segments to it. Sometimes they're just individual one segment pole saws, which makes it harder. If you have a segmented one, you can give yourself a little extra room to go out on an angle from the tree
mhm,
and kind of angle from underneath that tree.
right,
So kind of instead of standing directly under, don't stand directly under, go out a bit and get that undercut, and then you have to go to the other side and hopefully match up to that and cut it that way. That's, you know,
yeah.
the best I can describe it here without
Yeah.
showing
Yeah,
it.
no sweat. And I'll try to answer their other question. So somebody had attended some of our extension kind of county level fruit tree pruning
Right.
workshops, and they were looking for some assistance. I would encourage you to go back to your county extension agent first, and then we do have people that deal with fruit trees and our horticulture department here on campus. So we have extension folks that can help you in that regard as well. But I would start with my local county extension agent, and if for some reason that's you can't get a hold of them, whatever, just let us know where you're at. We can try to help you there. But there are some folks within our horticulture department that do have some expertise in that as well. All right, let's see
There
what
was
else we got.
another one. Someone has some really old apple trees on their property and they still flower but have very small fruit early on. She says about 50 to 75% have broken or dead limbs. Should she save them or try to plant new ones? What are your recommendations, Chris?
That's a wonderful question. I guess it depends on their objective. I have a soft spot for old apple trees, just as like individuals. So, I would probably let them linger on for a while. I
Mm,
would be really conscious of if they are harboring any diseases, though,
yeah.
being older trees like that. And so, kind of, maybe having a county hort person come out and talk with you and look at those trees would be a good place to start with that. If you are interested in fruit production, maybe some new ones,
Okay.
right? And so I would also still assess those trees to make sure that they aren't infected with any disease before I start planting out new
Yeah.
trees too. So,
Sounds great.
Yeah,
yeah,
and you got some nice compliments too on a
You
great
did.
presentation. So
yeah, thank you.
excellent. Yes, yes.
You
Well,
did.
And
thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'll
no,
hang
it's
around to
awesome.
the
It's
end
good
in case.
knowledge. Yeah, appreciate it.
My
Yeah.
Thank
pleasure.
you, Chris.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
look forward to having you again, bud.
Oh, we will. Don't worry.
Yes, I know. Yeah, you gave us a list, remember, right?
Chris gave
It's
me a
true.
list. Don't ever give me a list as a presenter if you don't want to be on several times. So that's
No
They're
all.
doubt.
all things that I enjoy talking about.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
good
Thank you,
stuff. Well,
Chris.
keep up the
Appreciate
great
it.
work and tell our friends at Kentucky Division of Forestry we love them very much.
Yeah.
will do. And I'll hang around to
That's
the end if
All
awesome.
anyone
right.
has any questions.
All
Great.
right.
Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you, Chris. All right.
All
So
right.
next we got
We
Franny.
have Franny. So, Franny, if you want to turn your camera on, Franny and I were talking, and I was like, "Hey, I've got someone who had to cancel. What can we talk about?" And she goes, "Well, dead trees." I was like, okay." So here we go, Franny.
Oh,
Hope to provide some
Appreciate
insight on the dead stuff we're seeing right now.
yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for having me on again.
Yeah.
As they mentioned, I am Franny Preston. I am with UK's Forestry Extension and Forestry Works of Kentucky, which I'll plug something at the end for that.
Of course.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about dead stuff. What are the dead trees that we're seeing right now, and what all can we learn about them? All right, so if you've got woods on your property or you go on a hike somewhere, it looks like this right now, right? There's not a whole lot of greenery. Everything's pretty gray, maybe brown. And so you're like, I don't even want to go outside. I don't want to go on hikes. There's nothing to look at. Well, there's where you're wrong. There is plenty to look at. We're going to look at some ways to explore the dead trees in your forest. All right, so we know the benefits of trees while they're alive. Obviously, you all have learned about those before on From the Woods today from other presenters. And also, we know that there are many benefits to harvesting timber and using the wood for wood products. But we're not focusing on either of those topics today. We're talking about trees that are dying naturally, are falling down naturally. And there are two types of dead trees that we're going to talk about. So there's snags and there's logs. And the difference is that snags are still standing up. So while they are dead trees, they are still standing up. And then logs are, of course, dead trees that are not standing up. They're laying down. Easy way to remember that. Snags are standing, logs are laying. So we're going to talk about snags first. So again, dead standing tree. And so they're some of my favorite things to find in the woods, not just during the winter, but year round. And snags, of course, for whatever reason that the tree died, they are starting to decompose and decay due to fungi and bacteria and insects and other invertebrates. And then things like woodpeckers, of course, are invited in to come eat those invertebrates. And they're creating some habitat that we'll get to look at in a second. All right, so here's some pictures of some snags we found the other day. Both of these trees, of course, were completely dead, and they're pretty noticeably dead. And they've got some cool stuff going on with them. So the one on the left, you can see that it's kind of starting to hollow out in the middle. And it's got some woodpecker holes in it. Woodpecker holes are some of my favorite things to find in the woods because while you might not get to see or hear the bird when you're there, you know that a certain type of woodpecker was there. And the one on the right, also another snag, and this one was pretty cool because the opening was closer to the ground and there were some acorns cached in there by some sort of squirrel or rodent. All right, so snags again, they're standing dead trees. They're decaying due to these animals and insects and fungi. And because of that, they play a really important role for a bunch of different wildlife species. So if you have a forester or a wildlife biologist come out to your property and you want to get some more wildlife on your property and make sure your forest is completely healthy, they're probably going to recommend that you leave a certain number of snags in your woods. And the reason for that is because they support so many different species. So they support cavity nesting and cavity dwelling birds such as prothonotary warblers and screech owls, maybe some rodents, maybe some squirrels. And as a tree completely hollows out and it's standing up, it can also be a really good roost site for tree-dwelling bat species. There are also some great trees like shagbark hickories that have this peeling bark even while they're alive. But what's cool about snags is even if they're not a hickory, a lot of times their bark's going to peel off as well. It'll create little eaves for bats to roost in. So fun bat trees to look for too. And again, during the winter, but also year-round, snags are really fun to look for if you're really into birds because they don't have any leaves on them. So a lot of times they're really good perching sites for birds to, sit at the top at, and they don't have anything obstructing their view. So they're the good spot to look for birds as well. All right, so we're gonna check out some snags that we found in the woods the other day. So as we're walking through the woods today in the middle of January, it looks pretty brown, pretty gray. That doesn't look like there's a whole lot alive. The fact of the matter is most of these trees are alive, they're just dormant right now. But what we're looking for today is dead trees. So we're looking for snags and we're looking for logs. And we'll talk about snags first. So a snag is a dead standing tree. So it's a dead tree, but it's still standing up. And a lot of people, when they see dead trees in their forest, they might immediately think we need to clear those out and get rid of them. And if it's in the way of your walking path or something and it's a danger, yeah, you probably should get rid of it. But snags are actually really beneficial to the forest ecosystem. And you can even see why with this dead ash tree. So this ash tree, for whatever reason it died, it could have been insect related, got hollowed out in the middle as the inside was rotting. And as it got hollowed out, of course, that happened because of insects. And then some woodpeckers came to eat the insects and they made these cool holes in these trees. So now this is habitat for some other animals, potentially other birds. If the tree gets hollowed all the way out, it could even be habitat for bats as well. So we've got another snag right here, and this one's a little bit smaller, but there's some cool stuff going on with it. So you can see some shelf fungus which of course fungus is one of the things we talked about that helps break down the trees. So we've got some cool shelf fungus going on. And then something else we noticed is that there's some sort of animal that's building its nest inside of this tree. So this tree is hollow enough to hold a little rodent or something that's building its nest inside that tree. All right, so we talked about snags, saw some examples of them, and now we're going to move on to logs, which of course are just dead, decaying trees that are on the ground. And logs are also decaying because of bacteria and mushrooms that's breaking the wood down, as well as insects and other invertebrates. Here's a cool picture of a mushroom I found growing entirely inside of a log, so mushrooms are really cool, especially when you're finding them on logs. And logs are really important habitat for a ton of different animals, and plants and fungi. So when you're finding logs in your woods, even during the middle of winter, you're going to find some cool stuff. They could be home to rodents, they could be home to insects and other invertebrates, snakes, other reptiles. And in the next couple of months, especially late February, early March, when we have those first warmish, rainy days, the salamanders are going to be out and about looking for those worms underneath the logs. So it's one of my favorite times of the year to find salamanders as well. And I asked the Nelson County clover buds to help me just encapsulate all the different things that were found in rotting logs. And shout out to them for coming up with some really great examples. As you can see here, there's quite a few things that you can find within a rotting log. All right, so we kind of talked about how logs and snags are really important for wildlife habitats, kind of the focus that we've had. But of course, as these trees are breaking down, they are turning into soil. So without trees dying and breaking down and decomposing due to fungi and bacteria and insects and other animals, we're not going to have any soil. So it's so important that we have some of these in the forest. That way the forest ecosystem is regenerating. It's even cool when there's logs that aren't completely into soil yet, but you're still seeing plants grow out of them. It's pretty amazing. So this log right here is a really good example of a tree decomposing and breaking into soil. If you look underneath the log after we flipped it, you can see the soil is turning really crumbly and the tree itself is turning into soil, which of course we need for more plants to grow to regenerate the forest. And under almost every log you'll find in the forest, you're gonna find some really cool things if you look really close. We've got some worms and some spiders. There's some ants under this one, a snail, a bee, some isopods. There's all sorts of things under this log that couldn't live just in the cold air during the winter. They need a warm place to live. So we'll flip this log back for now. And always remember when you're flipping logs in the woods to always put them exactly back how you found them. All right, so in summary, yay for decaying things. Snags and logs, they create so much habitat for so many different species, and they are a big part of the reason that we've got soil, which of course we need to keep our forest healthy. And decaying logs, decaying trees, they support every part of the forest ecosystem, from the little microscopic things that we can't even see to the forest as a whole. So thanks for learning all about decaying trees today. I know it's kind of a bit of an odd topic, but it's fun, something fun you can look at in your woods right now. And if you were thinking while I was talking about this that you know of a high schooler who would think this stuff is really cool, I'm going to shamelessly plug the Forestry Works field course. So Forestry Works is a program for high school students to learn all about different forestry topics. We've got a summer field course that is free to attend this year at UK's Robinson Forest. Again, it's for high schoolers. They get to spend a week basically getting a four-year forestry degree condensed down to a high school level over the course of a week. So I'll put a link for that application in the chat as well. But yeah, thank you all for learning about dead trees today.
Awesome. Thank you. That was a wonderful presentation, Franny. I really appreciate it.
Good stuff, Franny. You got more skills than I realized.
I
You
know.
I'm like,
Thanks,
she's got a
Billy.
list too, Renee.
She does. There's a long list of
Yeah.
Franny. Yeah,
Oh no, good
it's
stuff. But
awesome.
yeah,
So
I think it. Go ahead, Renee.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think you were talking, it is common, and I hear it from landowners, they see some dead trees and the desire to, clean them up or
Mhm.
whatever is there. And I think you really did a good job explaining why they add a lot of value to the forest. And if they're not getting in the way of what you're doing or something like that, they can be okay doing what they're doing. So yeah, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So we've had several questions that have come in, and one wanted to know if they wanted to create some snags for habitat. Are there any species that are better than others?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Hmm.
Um, hmm, that might, Billy, you might be able to answer that a little bit
Yeah,
better.
a little
Yeah.
bit. I would say, trees that have, the loose bark, right? That's always attractant. So, some of our trees that have looser bark like that would, some of our shagbark, hickories, and some of those make really good. The wood is strong too. So some of our trees that have ability, a little stronger wood that may last a little bit longer, those can be good candidates as well. It would be my opinion.
And also, is there a good formula for calculating the number of snags you should leave per acre?
That would be a question to contact a forester
Yeah.
or a wildlife biologist in your area for to
Yes.
look at your woodland specifically. It's going to vary depending on kind of what your goals are for your property, whether you're going to want to harvest it for timber if you're focusing it more on wildlife and how
Mhm.
active you are in the area if you're using it for recreation. So that's going to be site specific.
Yeah, no, that's good advice, Franny. It really is. I think sometimes people chase a number or target, and it's really a little bit out of place when it kind of is laid over their landscape and their history and all that stuff and what they can do. So, no, really good advice. Talk to your professionals on that, and they can help you navigate that. And a great thing about forest management, it gives you the opportunity to create additional snags, right? And we can get rid of some of those trees that are maybe competing with other trees that we're trying to survive, and then we can make those our snags going forward. So.
Mhm.
Work
We've
with
had
your professionals.
Definitely. And speaking of professionals, we've had several people that have listed professionals that they've worked with.
Awesome.
And just saying like Chris Will says a healthy forest is messy.
Yeah, it
Leave the
is.
dead trees down. And, somebody said that they're actually working with your husband, Franny.
Yeah, that's
It was
awesome.
awesome. Another question that we had come through that says, what are your thoughts on prescribed fire in my forest? Protect dead snags or burn them up?
Yeah, that's also going to depend on your management goal. We are big prescribed fire people around here.
Yeah,
If it is going to, if you've got the forest for it and it's safe to do it, prescribed fire is really good for regeneration. So that's kind of one of those things that you're going to want to weigh your options. Again, what are your goals for the area? It's going to, while it might get rid of some snags for wildlife, it's also going to open up the forest in a way that's going to cause more regeneration and it's going to invite new species in. So that's kind of just one of those things while you might be getting rid of habitat for an owl or something or for some woodpeckers, it's going to cause more regeneration and better habitat in the long run.
right.
And this person has some dead trees that are leaning against some live trees, impacting their growth. What should they do with the dead ones?
I would,
That's
yeah.
yeah, you can either leave them if they're
It-
not a danger to you. So that's
right.
kind of if they're a danger to you, let's say you have a trail going through your property and the dead trees are in the way, and they're gonna blow over on you in a windstorm or blow over on your house. That might be a situation where you want to try and get rid of them, cut them down, and let them turn into logs instead.
Yep.
But they can still be snags that are benefiting. So it's just kind of I'm sorry to keep saying it depends, but it just depends on
It
what
really
you want to
does.
do with them.
Yep.
I think every property is different, right? So
Yeah,
that's
it really
one of the
is.
reasons why we say it depends.
Yep. Yep. And every tree and how old is it? How long is it going to be leaning? Is it about to die? Is it, I mean, those would be kind of other things you'd want to think about. If it's a beautiful, like walnut tree and it's pushing it over, I might take it out,
Yeah.
if timber was my objective. But again, it comes back to your situation.
Mhm. All right. I think we've answered all the questions. Thank you so much, Franny. Again,
Thanks for
folks,
having me.
just like Chris, you'll be seeing Franny throughout the
Yes, over and over and
over
over.
and
We
over
love
and over again.
it. No, good stuff, Randy. Appreciate all you do for us here in the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources. And yeah, you're a great asset and with many skills. I
Yes,
love
and
it.
y'all sign up for Forestry Works if you have a high schooler that would like to do
Yes,
that.
and spread that word. It's a great program. You get to spend some time with Franny and a lot of other professionals. So yeah, if if you know anybody could benefit from that, please get it to them.
And we will have her on again to talk about forestry works,
Yeah,
just to let
yeah.
people know. But you know what? Thank you all for joining us so much. And Franny has put in that link that she had mentioned earlier. So we greatly appreciate you joining us each and every week. Because like we said, we say every week we can't do this without you. So it's you. You're the reason why we do this. And so we appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, yeah. Let us know. How can we help you? Right. We're all in this together, right? We all care about our forests and wildlife and our natural resources, and we can learn together. So if you're dealing with something, let us know. Others are probably as well. We want to get through this together.
Mm-hmm. And all of these programs are on fromthewoodstoday.com, like we mentioned earlier. But and they'll be on, and they're usually on within a week. So you can watch and rewatch and binge watch us for days if you'd like. I think we've said that before.
Yes, yes.
So, but we greatly appreciate you. And there's also a survey on there that if you have any questions, oh, I'm seeing something weird in my woods, you can email us or complete that survey at fromthewoodstoday.com or email me at forestry.extension@uky.edu, and we'll try to get all those answered.
Yeah, no doubt. So let us know. Let us help you be good stewards of your resources. And Franny just dropped a link in for the forestry
Forestry
works, I
work.
believe. Yep. So excellent. If you all ever have any questions, give us a holler. We'll try to help.
All right. You all take care, and we will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.